Hey, everybody, it's Rick. Welcome to the strategy session. It is Tuesday night, the 23rd of April, 2024. I wanted to welcome everybody who's tuning in tonight and those who will watch it again later. Tonight, joining me is Joe Trippi, my colleague, friend, and Democratic consultant of great note and honor, and our new friend, Gevin Reynolds, who is returning to the show for a second time, and we're delighted to have him back. He was a fan favorite on his previous appearance, so glad to have him back with us. I wanted to start out tonight by talking to you guys about what everybody else is talking about, this absolute disaster, dumpster fire, shit show, train wreck of Donald Trump's trial. Aside from all the pecker jokes that could be made but won't be made, see, I made one without making one. What do you guys think? Let's start with you, Joe. We're now in the first day of real cut and thrust in this thing with the testimony from David Pecker. Where do you think this is going to affect Trump politically as we go forward?
Look, I think near term it still does the usual thing. Is MAGA cult, it gets all buys into it's another hoax and they're all just coming after me, woe is me stuff. But look, I just think this is going to be devastating in terms of just the stuff that's like seeping out with that. It's going to hurt him with women, with just all the people he needs to expand to. It's actually going to continue to shrink on him. And I think you're already starting to see, him dropping a little in the polls, and Biden, moving up. And also, what's really fascinating so far in the first days of all this are the third party candidates are shrinking too. I mean, I think it's helping to make the contrast between, the crazy chaos and weird stuff you all forgot about with Donald Trump that you're now going to get reminded about.
Right.
And Biden out there, on the stump and winning with the vote in Ukraine and the supplemental, all these.
We're definitely going to talk
happening.
about that. That was a very big deal. Yeah, for sure. So Gevin, you've seen this week. I want to flip, while Trump is trapped in a courtroom, we have the president and the vice president out there barnstorming the country, doing the leadership things, being front and center on something that isn't an insane trial about porn star payoffs.
Yes, 100%. I think Joe is so right that this whole situation is just making the contrast between the two candidates ever more clear. Not only is Donald Trump stuck in the courtroom, but he's apparently falling asleep in the courtroom, So while he wants to say that the president is asleep at the wheel, he's literally asleep at his own criminal trial. And it's become very clear that, I think, to a lot of voters, that, again, that line of attack for the president's age between the two candidates, it's a non-issue. And it's very helpful right now because, like Joe said, and like you said, Rick, the president is literally out there going to, to meet with voters in the states that matter the most. The vice president is doing the same thing. And I don't think voters can look at what's going on and buy for 1 minute that Donald Trump, is a serious candidate. And what's so funny is that Donald Trump, through all of this, right, a few months ago, it was the end of Black History Month, right, talking to the group of conservative Black voters in South Carolina. Of course, he tried to make the case that his whole criminal trial is what's going to bring him closer together with Black voters because they're going to see him as experiencing the discrimination in the criminal justice system that Black voters, that Black people experience. And really, I can tell you that I have not heard any Black voter watching what's happening and be like, right?
That Donald Trump, man, I really relate to that guy.
But Rick, if you look at the contrast today, just today, so you have Biden in Florida talking about the 6-week ban on abortion, talking about the initiative there'll be statewide in Florida on abortion rights, restoring Roe, and standing up for women and their reproductive freedom. In court, the contrast is Donald Trump listening to David Pecker talk about the cat. Catching and killing, all these stories about affairs with all these embarrassing stories that are just. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's sort of like plays
Right.
right in to
Exactly.
this contrast where this guy appointed the three judges that helped overturn Roe and it put the country in chaos, bans all across the country, IVF, all of it, Arizona Supreme Court taking it back to 1864, all this
Right.
stuff. And what's Donald Trump doing? Sitting in court, with catch and kill on a whole bunch of embarrassing stories about his interactions and treatment of women, and denials and more lies. So,
Right.
I just think and again, all these characters that are about to appear in this trial are all people that most people wanted to forget. Just like, oh yeah, no, that didn't happen. I don't remember that. It's all going to get recalled now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I
Go
will
ahead.
add too, yeah, I think this couldn't happen at a better time. I saw a poll recently conducted by the New York Times and Siena College that showed that for a lot of Americans, their impressions, their views of Donald Trump's time in office have actually improved over the past 4 years. And, it's crazy for, I think, people like us to really see results like that and have them actually make sense. We know that presidents usually do benefit from a little bump in popularity after they leave office. That's not necessarily abnormal. But to see that Donald Trump has experienced a bump in 9 percentage points in terms of respondents saying that Donald Trump left the country better off,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredulous, right? But I think right, as this case continues to be prosecuted, I think it's going to bring back so much of the the negativity around Donald Trump that may have been forgotten over the past few years. And what's unique about right now, obviously, is that yeah, presidents do benefit from this sort of post-presidency bump. But what's unusual, what we don't usually see happen, is a defeated president, right, run again 4 years later while they're going through a criminal trial. And so
Right.
I think we'll hopefully see those numbers start to change. And certainly this criminal case, which is necessary for its own, in its own right, I think will, as Joe, you were saying, bring back a lot of what people may have forgotten over these
Mhm.
past 4 years.
I think that's been a gift that Trump has had for a while is, he basically took 2021 and hid at Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
In 2022, he didn't really creep out into the spotlight until mid-year toward the end of the year, which I think hurt Democrats, didn't help him much. And as he began to become the nominee again, it was that there were Republicans and independents and even some conservative Democrats who had voted for him who were like, oh man, oh, that again. Oh,
Mhm.
and I think this is like that again on steroids. This is like a moment where, you're reminded that the president, had an affair with a porn star, paid her off, dealt with the National Enquirer. All of it feels so skeezy and dirty. And no, I think the MAGAs will still stick with it.
Of
But a
course.
lot of those normie Republicans that we talk to at Lincoln and elsewhere, and a lot of independent conservatives are they don't want that alarm bell rung again. They don't want that thing in their face again. And to go back to what you mentioned, or Joe, the fact that the guy is, or maybe it's Gevin, I'm sorry, the fact that the guy is sleeping in court every day.
Yeah.
Every day he's falling asleep in court. The fact that his whole campaign for about a year was predicated on Joe Biden is 8,000 years old. He's senile. He's got dementia. He can't walk. He can't talk. And you've got Donald Trump, sleeping and farting in court. It's just not a great look. I mean, as somebody said the other day, like, you had one job if that's your campaign thing, stay awake. And the guy is just he's a wreck physically right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, the contempt hearing that started today, Judge Merchan was brutal on Trump, Trump's attorney, rather, Todd Blanche. I'm having a theory of the case that Trump is trying to get put in jail. What do you guys think of that? I think he's trying to have the judge put him in Rikers, at least overnight, so he can become a big martyr figure and cause a gigantic stir.
I don't doubt that. But I saw someone make a great suggestion today, and I can't remember who it was, but the judge should basically put him under house arrest,
Yeah.
right? I mean, basically, okay, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday you're in house arrest for 1 week, and if you don't do better, then we'll do it again, because then, I mean, then you're messing with something Trump needs. His campaign needs. They need him out there, even though he hasn't been really campaigning at all. But I
Right.
think that would avoid the Rikers sending him to jail thing. Avoid the $1,000 a pop isn't going to do anything. And he would still turn house arrest
Of course.
oh, woe is me. But I
Right.
mean, come
Right.
on,
It's a witch hunt.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to
Right.
stay.
It's a
Yeah,
witch hunt.
yeah,
It's a witch hunt.
It's the
Yeah.
deep state.
yeah.
Of course. Of course.
But I think that could be the middle ground that the judge might take. It made sense to me. It was a very smart attorney. I just don't remember who it was on
Yeah.
CNN.
Yep.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the judge is going to do what the judge thinks is the best legal call, right, given the circumstances. But do I think that Trump would find a way to play up, going to jail for contempt to his political advantage?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Of course, because we know that after he had his mugshot taken down to Fulton County Jail, he turned that into his
Huge fundraising day.
But
yeah, exactly. The whole fundraising day, right? To fund his whole, all his legal fees and all of that. So, I do think that, and of course, what he would definitely try to do is try to target that to the Black community and, try to make the case that, look at me, right? Look what's happening to me. What's happening to me? It's what's happening to y'all. No one's going to buy that because if you look at the actual, the proof is in the pudding. If you look at what his RNC, and I say his RNC because he literally, appointed the new head of the RNC, his own daughter-in-law, right? So it is his RNC. His RNC has closed down all of the minority outreach centers that they opened over the few years, which were supposedly to reach minority voters. And not only does that show that they're completely unserious in their efforts to reach minority voters, but think about it. All of the people of color who are working in those minority outreach centers for his RNC have now lost their jobs. He literally went and said, "You're fired." So, I think let's not forget that as well. But of course, if you were to go under house arrest, if you were to go to jail for contempt, no matter what, he's going to try to spin it to his political advantage because he's desperate and he knows the kind of loyalty that he has from his base.
But the thing that it's one of those be careful what you wish for, Donald Trump, because if the judge actually puts him in Rikers or house arrest and Trump does the woe is me, it's the deep state coming out to get me, there's going to be two impacts. The first is MAGA will buy that hook, line, and sinker,
100%,
and go into rage.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, I mean, I'm talking about I mean, Republican leaning independents, the Bannon line. I mean, they're going to see the guy who's the nominee, the Republican nominee, is in jail under house arrest. I mean, that would be a massive story, under house arrest for being in contempt of court. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like his sledgehammer thing. Yeah, that would work great. It's going to work great for his MAGA buddies. But man, I think it will just again whack a whole bunch of people away from him. Just shatter any of those people who are thinking, oh man, I can't do Biden. I got to go for. Oh no, he's in jail.
Well, and I mean, listen, guys. I don't know about you guys, but I've been to Rikers.
Yeah.
When I worked for Giuliani, I decided one day I was handling some issues about it, how horrifying it was. And I said, all right, I need to go out there. And so guys from the PD came and we went out to Rikers for a day. I would not wish going to Rikers on my worst damn enemy. It was a pretty grim experience. I got to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of mental health issues wrapped up in the population of Rikers. It is a terrifying place. I will say this, he's never going to go there. But if he did, Trump would not last 6 hours.
That's right.
He would lose his mind.
He's lucky that when he got himself booked into the Fulton County Jail or got his mugshot taken, that he was in and out, because that same jail a couple of weeks ago, there were like several deaths in the span of a few days. There was an inmate there again, this was a jail, right? So these are people who have not even, these people are innocent until proven guilty. But there was a man who was literally found dead with bed bugs all over his body inside.
Yeah.
So like you talk about Rikers, like the Fulton County Jail, like people are dying in that jail. So he's lucky.
Right.
He's lucky that despite the discrimination that he's facing in our criminal justice system, that he was able to go in and out. But I think you're right. We know Donald Trump cannot win, election to the White House with just his MAGA base. So all of this is going to, like you said, Joe, really.
It's a really interesting trap that he finds himself in.
Exactly. Yeah. And it makes you wonder whatever happened to Law and Order, right? So.
Right. Speaking of traps, we had a vote this weekend, and the Senate today has voted to pass it. I believe it was 82 to 19 or something like that, or 18 this afternoon. Ukraine aid. First off, I want to show a piece we did about Ukraine to frame it up. Before the Republicans voted on this, we were banging this away in Republicans' faces in the last weekend before the vote. So let's play that if we could, Sam.
Russia's brutal, unprovoked war against Ukraine. Daily attacks on civilians, schools, hospitals, neighborhoods. Vladimir Putin wants to reestablish the old Soviet Union. The goal of this evil new alliance with Iran, China, and North Korea is to humiliate America, to drive us out, destroy NATO, weaken our military might. And it's working. It's working because Republicans are helping Putin right now. They've joined Russia, Iran, and China in fighting against Ukraine and America by blocking vital assistance, all so Russia can win. Ukraine has never asked for a single American to give their life to protect their country, just the ammunition to beat Putin. Ask your congressman why he's backing Russia against America and Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is America's enemy. And if you stand with America's enemy, what does that make you?
Yeah, and a majority of the Republicans in the House voted it down.
Right.
They voted no. Still, I mean,
you know what? And they had a briefing on Tuesday of last week with the pollster for the CLF, the Congressional Leadership Fund, the Republican super PAC for Congress folks. They had a briefing that showed that aid to Ukraine was popular in every Republican swing district by big majorities, that it was popular by big pluralities in almost every other district, and that Vladimir Putin among conservative Republicans had a 6% approval rating, and among very conservative Republicans had a 9% approval rating. They knew they were doing something dumb, stupid, counterproductive, and pro-Russia, and still most of them voted against it. But it was a moment where, we will look back on this, and I think we'll basically say, I think in a weird way, that vote was when Hakeem Jeffries became Speaker.
Yep. I think that's right. I still think all these votes are going to have bigger implications down the line for a lot of these candidates, even in the Senate. You look at Larry Hogan in Maryland, and right now he's ahead. But this is the Republican Party you would be putting in the majority with Larry Hogan's vote. I mean, in other words, I think even some of the people that we would call, moderate or more moderate Republicans are going to be punished for just how insane the majority of Republicans in the House are, under Trump and with Trump's leadership. It's going to one more time cost them Senate races they could have won. I don't know, Rick. I've been meaning to ask you. I mean, do you really think, with the president going down to Florida today, is it tightening there? Or is this like fantasy land kind of stuff?
Here's where I think it is in Florida. Real talk. I think we've gone from a 10-point Trump lead to probably a 6 or 7-point Trump lead. I don't think we've changed the game yet. I don't think Debbie Powell has changed the game yet, but the damage of this abortion amendment in Florida, it is cataclysmic. I know Republicans are in a panic about the fact that DeSantis now wants to fight it out. He wants to go to war over this issue. I know the Trump team does not want that to happen. They want this thing to go away. They want to ignore it and go, okay, well, it passed. Nothing we could do about it. State rights. But they are let's put it this way: this is the first crack in a very thick layer of ice I've seen in 20 years in Florida for the Democrats. It really is, and I think the party's doing a good job of converting on it in terms of reg and in terms of activism. It is still a hard hill to climb, but we could end up in a position where the cascade starts to break against Trump in other big states. I've got my fingers crossed about Pennsylvania. If Pennsylvania slides solidly into Biden territory, and then we're going to probably see North Carolina fall after that, Florida could be in the fight. I'm not there yet. Again, it's gone from being a giant lead to a big lead, but the arrows are pointing downward as of now. I mean, we talked a lot about Georgia. I think that's the same story in Georgia.
Yeah.
I think the arrows are sort of.
Yeah, I agree. Some big news that came out of Georgia yesterday is that President Biden is going to be delivering the commencement address at Morehouse College, an all-men's HBCU in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
My sister is a senior at Spelman College, which is their sister school, literally the same campus in downtown Atlanta. I think that's huge. The president and the vice president both have been making a lot of trips, not only to Georgia, but to North Carolina. And I think that's going to be crucial, right? But they continue to do that. They continue to engage with voters on the ground, especially Black voters who really need that activation to not just oppose Trump, but to get off the couch and vote for Joe Biden. So, I think that was some great news yesterday that, another trip for President Biden down to Georgia to deliver that commencement address. I think it's going to be important that they continue to do that.
Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I want to get. I think I took us off the Ukraine thing for a second, so I want to steer it back that way. I asked about Florida and Georgia. I agree with Gevin about all that. But I like how does it? I mean, it's just fascinating to me that this all could have happened 6 months ago. I mean, this is all. Talk about Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump did this. MAGA did this, right? For 6 months, thousands and thousands of people died their lives would have been, would have been saved if this had been done 6 months ago. This vote is going to save thousands and thousands of lives, as Zelensky has said. But to now be able to how many of them are going to be out there saying, yeah, I voted for that. Or it's great that America is standing with Ukraine. The same way they stand in front of the big bridge or the big road.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Right? They're going to say they're going to do what they do with the investment or with the infrastructure bill. When it comes time to cut that ribbon, those some bitches are all there on the street, right in front of that big old ribbon.
See you at the groundbreaking. That's what he said at the State of the Union last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a remarkable hypocrisy, but I think it's something that they can't get away from it. They're drawn to that sort of thing because they think the world doesn't watch them anymore. They think they're disconnected from, voters that are the MAGA base watching Fox and everybody else. They think there's no crossover, but folks like us and everybody else who's paying attention to it knows there's a crossover. So
exactly. My favorite thing is seeing Brian Kemp, show up at a ribbon cutting for a new EV facility, pretending like he and all the other Republicans did not oppose the Inflation Reduction Act. That's the money allowed for that to open in the first place.
It is, but I think you're right, Joe. There's also the moral dimension of Ukraine. Passing that bill had such huge implications. Mm-hmm. And, you saw today Steve Bannon going crazy with fury about Lindsey Graham talking Trump into not, killing the bill, and about how Mike Johnson is a communist cuck traitor and all. I mean, just their fury about it and their insane overreaction to it really tells me a lot. Mm-hmm. And look, I'm hopeful. And I had some communication over the weekend with friends in both the UK and in Germany, who both were, they're both political folks. They're both enormously religious. Like, you don't know how much this meant to people watching in Europe, from Putin to every other leader in Western Europe and every NATO leader. If it had not happened, God knows what would have gone on. It was a moment that was really really important for the country. And when you look at look, I'm not, as I said in an article yesterday, I'm not going to go out and like take long walks and hot showers with Mike Johnson, but the fact he did the right thing even on one thing, and the fact that he understood that having a bipartisan agreement with Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic caucus to make this happen was a good thing for the country. I'm just relieved about it. I'm not praising him all that crazily. I'm just relieved that he didn't plunge America's reputation in the world and Ukraine into a really dark place.
Yeah, I also think it's really important that I think any time that both sides are able to come together and pass a really big bill is something that we should all celebrate, because we know that there's significant distrust among Americans in the federal government, especially the legislative branch, especially Congress. And so I think any time that congressional leaders can display bipartisanship and coming together on a really crucial issue, I think it's something that we should all celebrate.
It's another, and it's but it still is like just a jarring another round of Trump losing.
Yep.
And Biden getting it done. I mean, Trump did not want Ukraine funding. He wanted Putin to have Ukraine. He urged that, he killed all the bills, told him not to do it, Mike Johnson, all that. But Biden, who actually understands how this all works, was, and Hakeem and everybody was one more time, whether it was infrastructure, whether it was, Inflation Reduction Act, one more time now, the Ukraine bill, the funding in Israel, all of it, it goes the way Biden wanted it to go and went against, again, Trump loses. But MAGA still cheers it on. It's just like, and this is a fight where, Putin, as Rick points out, like 6% of the country, he's got a 6% favorable rating, but there's still, okay, I'll accept that too. He must have a good reason. Whatever. It's just amazing to me.
Well, you can apply the same thing to what's going on at the southern border, right? I mean, that's another example in which President Biden was ready to take action and sign a bill, a bipartisan agreement. But once again, Donald Trump tanked it. So I think you can take that same, show of which party, which leader is actually serious about solving some of the most crucial issues facing our country and the world, and you make the same case there on the border.
Sure. You always want to be on the strong side of the argument. And right now you've got Joe Biden, who is stronger on the border and stronger on national defense and stronger on international relations and stronger on facing up against a war in Europe against Putin. I mean, he's on the strong side of all this. Trump is the guy, who's the guy wearing the orange clown makeup, sitting in a courtroom every day, farting in his Depends. This is a really different world than they started out at. Well, folks, we're coming up on the end of the show. I want to thank Gevin and Joe, as always, for joining. We are going to have a great show next week. I think we've got some graphics for that somewhere in the pile here, Sam. But we're looking forward to Simon Rosenberg joining us next week. And we'll keep bringing you guys some great content. Do us a big favor and go on YouTube, like and share this show. We'd really appreciate that. Follow us on all the usual socials. And of course, there is Resolute Square swag out there now. They've got the link over there. Thanks again, folks, for joining us tonight. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thanks, all. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, everyone. Yep. Bye.
See ya.
Take care.